Hey there, guys. Welcome back to the Guitar Hour podcast. This is episode number 146. My name is David Beebe, one of your hosts for this evening, and joining me tonight is Daniel Smith.
Hello.
And Dr. Jake Wilson.
Hello.
Hey, guys. How's it all going? How are you two doing this week?
Yeah, not bad. Black Friday stuff happening. Probably dates, when we recorded this. But it's the Thursday before the official Black Friday, which wasn't a thing when I was growing up, but now I'm like bombarded with actually discounts of things I want. So it's been very difficult to keep any money.
Anyone you've ever bought anything off is like, hey, how about this? Shiny.
I know, but it's the thing is, I've got a bit of like immediately launched into something we didn't say we were going to talk about, but like I've been looking at my emails and it's kind of like you say, oh, interesting. This company who does like
plugins,
let's say plugins, plug in this,
plug in that, plug in this.
they're doing like kind of cross-grade loyalty deals. And I've spent way too much time looking at these things, and it's been super enticing. I think I've already spent too much, and it's getting worse. I've been on the Spitfire library today, going, maybe I could do some of this.
Dan, what about you? Have you been dropping dollars on?
Do you know what? The only thing I've dropped dollars on is a bottle of whiskey because of you.
Yeah.
Look at that. Look where it's at.
Dan, you nearly did a Jake. That's a half a Jake there.
That's a half a Jake, yeah. It's half a Wilson. Where there's a Wilson, there's a way.
For the listeners, Dan's just holding up a half-empty bottle of Smokehead there. Fully indoctrinated into the whiskey hour now. That's
man, it's been good. But
you can't beat them, join them, eh?
I haven't been doing the Black Friday thing. I'm actually on a very I'm not entirely sure why or what the rules are upon this kind of shackles that I put on myself, but I'm trying not to spend unnecessary. I say unnecessary. I've just held up half a bottle of drunk whiskey, but like I don't really need stuff. Like I saw a deal on a Aston mic, and I was like, oh, maybe I don't need it. It's just like, So I don't know. We'll see what happens. The only thing I've thought about is like maybe parts to upgrade my PC if they're going cheap or cheaper. But it's stuff that I don't need. Do you know what I mean? And it's I don't know. I'm not even really. I'm too busy to be looking anyway. So I did see something interesting in terms of. Did you see? Oh God, Mark Palmer's post the other day. He said he went into his local like Asda and saw 2 PlayStation 5s on the shelf, and he works in the video game industry, and he said, I saw these 2 just sitting on the shelf, and I'm sick of seeing them going for like over £1,000 on eBay, so I'm going to buy both of them, and then if anyone wants to buy them off me for exactly the price they are through Facebook, then they can do. I was like, what a lad,
yeah, nice.
It's like,
Realise they're in shops. I would have been up there like a flash. Asda, who'd have known?
So yeah, he's some sort of he's like a PS5 Batman. He's just buying them and like
Robin Hood.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
No, I've not been doing any Black Friday purchases specifically. Although I'm relevant to the show, I do have a new audio interface, so hopefully it's all working. This is the first time I've recorded a show on it, so the last Focusrite was getting to the end of its life with very crackly pots, and the gain was always a little bit odd. So yeah, I've got new audio interface, and yeah, I'm getting the same temptations from Isotope, Jake, the same plug-in temptations, and I really want to get the RX Advanced for when we have a guest on, and with if the audio's not gone to plan, then they've got the RX Advanced plugins have got incredible algorithms for voice isolation from noise and things. So, very tempted by that, but no, probably not going to. Hold off.
It's for the good. It's for the good of the pod.
Well, indeed, that's the thing. It's like I might do that because it is very good for rescuing audio, as we've had to do many times with the.
And I did hear. I was listening to an episode of Guitar Wank with Whit Smith on it, and due to time zones, Whit Smith was doing the podcast from inside his car with a bottle of whiskey because his kids were in bed. And I'm thinking, I wonder if Beebs could you RX out, an old Chevy or whatever.
Amazing.
We didn't really do catch-ups, did we?
No, we just talked about spending money. So
I totally derailed the catch-ups.
Oh, we haven't mentioned Tom's not here this week, as you're sure you'll have noticed by now. He's busy with other things. I think he's having a movie night tonight.
He's busy with other things, like he's doing something really important. He's watching Starship Troopers, people. That's what he's doing. He's doing his part.
We've been in all of our defences. We've been very preoccupied. Last week, I was shooting an awful lot of videos for the upcoming app, which we've still been fairly cryptic about publicly, but it's going to be very soon talking about that to you guys on the show. So all that stuff has gone well, and trying to do some practicing as well, I guess, which we're going to come into later on in the show. But before we do that, let's do some housekeeping. I want to say a huge thanks to all you lovely guys supporting the podcast over on Patreon. This helps us keep the lights on, keep the wheels on the bus, and make the show even bigger and better. So on that note, we've got some new signups. Michael Larson, who's resubbed, which is really good of you. Thank you, dude. He's the Executive Producer Plus level. And then new signups, we've got Alex Jones and Liam Willis with the extra minutes. Thank you very much. From just $1 a week, you can get longer episodes, the full-length interviews, all the additional monthly bonus episodes, and also we can do live streams, video live streams with guitars once a month for the Executive Producer Plus levels, which we're doing this Sunday, by the way. So when this comes out, it will be this coming Sunday. What date is it?
29th?
29th. Yeah, Sunday the 29th at 8 p.m. UK time. We'll be doing the video live stream where we will go into more detail of what we've covered on the show, do some examples, demonstrations, that kind of thing, answer your questions. So come and join us.
And I think, Dave, aren't all of the past live streams on there? So if you sign up to the Patreon, you get all of them that we've done so far.
Yes, that's a good point, actually. I don't mention that enough, but all of as soon as you sign up, then all of the previous content from the past months and years is available to you. So all the live streams going back over a year, all of the bonus content we've done various experiments with different bonus episodes and video episodes and things, and that's all available to you on the Patreon when you sign up. Thanks for reminding me on that, Jake.
No worries.
Other ways that you can support the show is to check out our merch over on Teespring. We have T-shirts, stickers, and mugs. I always forget the mugs. If you want to check out that, it's over on teespring.com/the Guitar Hour podcast. If you can't do any of that, then a rating and review would be lovely over on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram. You can send an email into hello@theguitarhour.com and join in the discussion at the Facebook discussion group. We have some good chat going on there recently, some nice discussion back and forth with the things. And we'd love to see you there. Oh, one more thing. Yep, the podcast is now on YouTube as well. I mentioned that last time, but we're now uploading the audio onto YouTube. Okay, then let's get into the show with some follow-up on Giant Steps from last week. Seemed to go down really well. Lots of engagement, lots of downloads, lots of chat about it. So that's cool. And we certainly enjoyed that type of an episode where we structure it around a theme. This week's going to be a little different with a little bit more of a mixed bag and some follow-up stuff. Going to read some of your emails and things. But what's interesting, what's happened through the week is both Jake and I have been logging some hours on this, and I've had some observations which might be cool to talk about in terms of when practicing it, and maybe Jake and I just kind of explore some of the sort of ups and downs of the week through working on this stuff. In fact, before we hit record, Jake was just having an immersion. I don't know quite how you phrased it. I can't remember now, but you were shedding right up to the minute we hit record on the podcast, weren't you?
Well, I had like about 15 minutes before we were due to start, and I thought I haven't looked at it today, so I had a furious Giant Step session, and we were a bit late starting, so I kept like finishing playing over it and then looking at the chat to see if he'd posted the Zoom link back in. Okay, and ended up doing a little bit more than I thought. It was weirdly yesterday I felt like I'd taken a step back like kind of made negative progress. But
Oh,
today
man.
seems to have consolidated. But I find that
Consolidated the negative or the positive?
no, the positives.
Right.
And I think part of it is I'm at the point now where there is a little bit of boredom creeping in. Like it's not interesting me as much as it should. And the other thing that's happening is I'm almost getting sort of so bored of my own lines and things that I've done before. I'm deliberately avoiding them and sounding cack because of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's an interesting mindset, that, because I think
So I've just got I've gotten to that point.
Because I was saying this the other, it's not quite the same mindset, but I was talking about that thing of like being in between like vocab and improvising. I'm going, in your head, you're going, oh, you can't play that, or you can't play that because that's not part of this or not part of that. And I guess it's the same sort of mindset when you put those restrictions on yourself of don't play that, you play that all the time. So you end up with nothing left. And then it's like, then you just sound shit, and then you can't sort of, there's none of that positive feedback of like, oh, that sounded great, I'm going to do that again.
It's as though unless I'm focusing purely on my time, I'm focusing on trying to come up with new ways around. And at that tempo, it's a little bit frustrating because it's just a bit above that. But yeah, there's a couple on YouTube, right? So there's a bossa one that's like 210.
105, I think.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
The bossa one. Yeah.
I totally got mixed up. It's
Put
the
links in the show
105.
notes to these, actually. 1 second.
Yeah, then there's the one that's at 150, and then there's the one that's at 220, but there's also one that's at 280. And I've been trying to do the 280 one, and it's been fun, but it's really, really difficult, and it's easy to sort of derail. But if you'd have told me that at the beginning of lockdown it was kind of, almost doable and worth doing, I'd have been quite surprised, because I never intended to sort of learn this stuff, and it's just something like the lockdown conundrum of what to do during this period that makes me attracted to such projects. It's just the kind of thing you can do every day, a challenge that I might not have time for in the future. So as we go into tier 3 down here with you guys, I don't know what this is. In the UK, there are different lockdown regions, and where I am, we've gotten rid of. We've had a pretty light run of it so far, but now we're in tier 3, so I don't get to be smug anymore. To the guys up north who've had it much worse. But yeah, it's like I know that I have some weeks ahead of me of this, and so why not just crack on? Something to do every day, isn't it?
Yeah. I've been not practicing as much over the last few months for app reasons, but when I have come back to it, it's been nice that it hasn't been as bad as I thought it would be, and even in some areas I've found like there's still been a little bit of improvement, which is nice. But I've had a few. This could be an episode of Massive Beebs Revelations. There's a couple of them, and that one of them with regards to Giant Steps was this idea of the tempo and the technique and the language all intertwining in this really complex mess of problems that can be hard to unpick. So what I've realized is that when improvising, let's take that backing track that Jake was referring to at 105 or whatever it is, the bossa one. When working on that track, my technique allows a kind of language that when I try at 220 or 250, I don't have access to. And so there really is there is this kind of like wall that it kind of hit up against. So, and Jake, I realized this, I think, when you pointed it out to me. You were commenting on the video that I'd posted about the technique, my technique allowing for a wider intervallic range in terms of arpeggios than perhaps what you were saying. But I still feel that restriction in compared to when I'm doing it at 105.
Yeah, same.
And so the big thing, what I went to is I went back to the transcription to Coltrane's original and started looking at the hard bars, and looking at just looking at how is he tackling it. And it's a lot of things that are just not playable on the guitar, or they are so hard to articulate at speed and improvised fashion that I just think I was resistant to that. So what I've started doing is, this may be really good for the live stream actually, or for the bonus episode to go into super nerdy detail, but I've started looking at refingering certain types of lines. So looking at fingering those passages that he plays over the difficult bars, so bars 1 and 2 and 5 and 6, and trying to do it in ways that sort of fit my hybrid technique or fit my picking technique. And that's been really interesting. And when I did that, certain things started to seem a little bit easier. Certain things started to seem a little bit more manageable, even at the sort of 250-ish zone. I haven't done a take at 280 yet. I might try that this week. But it's really, really interesting. So there are lots of, because when you arpeggiate, you've kind of limited options in terms of how you can access that on the instrument. And so I think that when historically, and I think again, Jake, you referred to this about things becoming very scalic or scalar at the higher tempos. And it's been a real interesting observation, and it should be kind of obvious, but it's only sometimes when you put the microscope and if someone else kind of mentioned some things to you where it can really kind of bring it to the forefront.
I mean, maybe the thing to say would be that because I was working on getting around at the slower tempo, I was working on stuff that might be unworkable at the higher speed. And so, as we've discussed, and so what I might have spent more time with at the slower tempo would have been those kind of, I called them knotty, KNOTTY, scalic ideas that kind of fit within close proximity of each other. Now, it's not to say that those should be used or might be used exclusively. That would be very dull. But there are just some times when you're playing something that's that fast where there isn't really a convenient, let's call it a convenient arpeggio that's knocking around. And so, another strategy ought to be available to you. And so, you make a few compromises there just because it's better to continue with the rhythm and be playing in the appropriate harmonic fashion rather than going for that sort of huge textural variety that you get from playing arpeggios across the strings and all those kinds of things. Because at that tempo, it just my technique just isn't up to it unless I already know what I'm going to play. And one of the other weird things that's happening is that there's a kind of gradual construction of these long lines that kind of just link onto one another with muscle memory. So I'm getting a bit of that coming on as well, and that's quite exciting. And I think listening to the Coltrane solo and listening to how many aspects of repetition there are throughout it,
big time, yeah.
I think that's more than okay.
Yeah.
If you center it on, or if you center your goals on being able to perform a successful solo over it. But there is just this kind of weird guitarist-y ego thing which never lets that be okay. You've always got to be able to sort of move it around, or I don't want to get stuck on that one because I need to have this and I need to have that. That's not to say that Coltrane was lacking variety, by the way, Jesus. But the point I'm trying to make is that maybe I'm a bit too sort of down on myself for allowing myself to get into those kinds of patterns and getting totally, totally derailed when I land in other bits of the fretboard, like on the wrong finger, where I just don't have any moves that come to mind too readily.
I mean, what you were posting is sounding amazing, dude. I mean, it's inspired me to actually take a break from the app and turn the camera on, because I think it's one of the nice things about that sort of motivational Slack group that we have, which is part despairing at the world and part planning the podcast. And
it's a therapy session most of the time.
It's great therapy. It's one flew over the cuckoo's nest in digital form.
So Jacob been posting some practice videos, and it inspired me to do the same. And I think that I definitely have the frustration of, this has been actually on an episode months and months ago, where I've talked about feeling that I can do it really well one day and then the next day it's just total dog shite. Or I can do like a couple of choruses and I'm on the rails and I'm hanging on and it's all smooth and I'm thinking ahead, and then it can just completely go off the edge of the cliff. And that is I don't think that will ever stop frustrating me or motivating me to.
I think you're probably operating in a very interesting part of your brain for things like that to be going on. Like you're probably operating. I'm not saying you're operating at your limits, but you're probably in like the mental cardio zone, if you like. So that it probably feels like, I can do it today, and then another day you can't. But it is, it's quite likely that you are putting yourself in a situation where you're really switched on. And then you're doing these things, and then on another day, it's much like if you, depending on what you've done that day or how you're feeling, if you try and exercise, you might not be as fiery as you were another day. You know what I mean?
But the frustrating thing, this was like at 3 a.m. after I'd been like that. I think I'd been either up or I'd woken up or whatever, couldn't sleep, and I've been working on the app, and then I'll just do this. And so then it was like, it's really.
Are you one of those guys that like can unexplainably drink loads one time and then another time drink 2 drinks and you're done?
Yeah.
What is that about? I know exactly what you mean. It's a mysterious thing.
The other
I was listening to it was on, someone mentioned it on a Joe Rogan podcast the other day. I know I mentioned Joe Rogan quite a bit on it, but they were talking about really high level chess players and saying that
we need
there
Jamie.
are these super high level chess guys, when they're in a chess tournament, can burn like 6,000 calories a day from being sat there with the sheer mental, the mental activity of it. I mean, how does that
Rogan
work?
has a lot of pseudoscience flow through his mind
Well,
in the
he
show.
does.
So I mean, I'd be careful about maybe taking everything as. Yeah. So the other thing with the final thing I'd say on giant steps and my progress and technique is I find it easier, and this isn't some weird sort of flex on my part or brag or anything, I promise you, but I find it easier to do it faster than slow. So one of the really awkward things about using a hybrid technique is that swing picking becomes quite difficult. And so I find that kind of 200 to 220 far more difficult to stay on the rails with than I do at 250 and above, where things can sort of straighten out a little bit more, and which suits the sort of legato hybrid thing, which I do more. So that is a continual frustration as well, where I find that it's not my brain that's lacking, or it's not the sort of the changes line connection that's lacking. It's the physical articulation of being able to execute sort of that mid tempo, mid up. Sorry, what's the word? Medium up sort of swing. Yeah, that's a frustration.
I guess there's at a slower tempo as well. You're sort of, because you're not being like physically pulled along by the changes and the sheer speed of it. There's an element of being a bit more exposed, which kind of
choices are a bit more important.
Yeah, it kind of opens things up to be like, all right, then what have you got?
Yeah.
Whereas at a fast tempo, if you're making the changes, it's probably going to sound good.
But slow is fine.
You know what I mean?
Like the bossa one. I mean, it's totally fine. Like honestly, it's this weird window from like 160 to 220 through 30. That's just absolute torture for me to play at.
It is the fourth gear thing. It's the point at which
fourth gear. Right?
It's the rhythm. It's where it's rhythmically discernible if you're in or out of time in a big way. And it's also discernible for the melodic content. Like if it's very fast, you can land on a wrong note and quickly move away without much of a problem. And at 220, it's just in that sort of gap where a kind of a poorly planned note will expose you. But it's also at the point at which, as you rightly mentioned, that there is still an apparent, let's just call it a triplet. Swing, and that swing isn't just rhythmic placement; it's also articulation, and relative weighting and all of these things. And so, if your technique isn't sort of automatically in that place, it's going to expose you because it's slow enough but fast enough. It's that sort of. For me, I call it fourth gear because the stuff under it, it's basically driving around the town, isn't it? You just kind of, in a nice little
it's like a jazz B road.
Yeah, it is
jazz BB road.
When you're on the motorway, you can coast a bit. You can sort of. I'm taking this analogy way too far, but just go with me here.
I like the fourth gear.
You can overtake people.
Yeah.
But when you're on that jazz B road, you got to swerve in and out. It's a country lane. Yeah. You're going fast enough to make a mistake. I tell you that. Keep your seatbelts on. Don't drink and drive.
I remember the same sort of like weird tempo thing when I was younger, trying to play like Paul Gilbert sort of picking patterns. Because there'd be some though where it's like if you do it, it's like just too fast to do like triplets. But then if you did like half of that, it'd be like da 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 da, and it's like, oh, that sounds lame.
Easy.
Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah, that's a really good point actually. In that it's the improvising aspect of it. So I can play pre-prepared swing picking stuff. Like I can play Don Lolita speed and everything. I can play, the kind of heads and things. But I struggle for and I have been sort of rethinking and changing my swing picking into sort of an economy, sort of Mike Marino style thing, to try to get to terms with this. But it's really when it comes to the improvisation, and that's exactly the same issue I had when I was doing a lot of shred and rock stuff, where I could pre-prepare my sort of 3-note per string triplety things and the Petrucci kind of stuff, but I could never improvise with that technique. And one of the amazing things of when I first discovered sort of Tom's modern legato stuff, and I started learning that style of the hybrid picking and legato, was it sort of, I wouldn't say it came easy, but it was something that felt really fun and natural that I felt I could immediately start to improvise with. And I'd never had that before, that sort of improvisational to high technical level. And so I've definitely sort of zoned into that one area of improvisational technique, and I'm sort of fighting against that with that limitation that it doesn't translate, it doesn't apply very well. And Tom's talked about this loads on the podcast and elsewhere about how that very specific sort of technique and approach doesn't track very well for doing swing type playing. And of course, the other massive thing that I'm spend my life doing is trying to play jazz and changes and stuff. And so it's a continual frustration of how I crack this nut. And I think the answer for me, I know Tom's sort of been slightly warning me about this, but I think the answer for me is to sort of have another technique in my sort of quiver that's very, very different. So if I'm playing jazz, air quote, jazz, then it will be hopefully at some point with a sort of another technique that I switch on and switch off when I'm doing other things that aren't that. So maybe I run the risk of breaking myself entirely there, but it's, for me, that does seem the logical way to tackle the problem. And certainly that Mike Marino masterclass video on the sort of economy aspects of swing picking was really, really useful. I'll put that link in the show notes to that, if anyone else is struggling with this or wants
Black Friday.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they're doing the Black Friday, but yeah.
It's an interesting point, that, because I often think about the different guitar players that we know on the scene and things like that, and there are some people that very early on kind of like nail their colours to the mast. This is the kind of player I am, and with that comes a set of vocabulary, technique, sounds, etc., etc. Tom is one of those people that he's even gone as far as changing his tuning and stuff like that to really commit to what he wants to do.
Freak.
Now, I don't feel like I have done that. I've been somebody that has tried to, just be interested in lots of different things. And as a result, there's some element of versatility there, but I probably don't excel at any one thing. Do you think there comes a point where, I don't know when this will be, but like you're saying about, you want to do the jazz thing and the legato thing, is there going to be a point where you go, right, that's all I'm going to do. All of the techniques that I potentially might need for other things, I'm just going to, leave them on the back burner, and I'm just going to do these things. If it breaks the other things, doesn't matter. I've committed to this now. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think I already made that decision like 7, maybe nearly 8 years ago. Before, sort of broken record how many times I've mentioned this, but when I did start to make these huge decisions in my life about wanting to learn the guitar again, that was a sort of way of thinking, okay, I'm in my early 30s now, I need to sort of focus, narrow. Jake used that sort of, what did you say last week about Tom, in that sort of laser focused or narrow in?
Yeah. It depends how nice you want to be. If you're being nice, you say laser focused.
If you're being a dick.
And if you're being a dick, you say blinkered, and I'm clearly a dick.
No, but it's a really great point, and that's exactly what I did. It was a very conscious decision, because for me it was about tackling old demons, summiting the jazz mounting, and having a form of improvisational technique that I felt I had a handle on, and those were the two things that I very consciously thought of. I'm happy to sacrifice my country playing, my tapping,
my country.
Because
sacrifice for my country.
Loads of things that would be in the sort of more useful skill set of the guitar player. I decided I'm okay with putting those to one side, because I have to do this. I've got to put right my past mistakes on these things, and I thought that this would be a blinkered or a laser focused mindset would help me achieve that in the post 30, as opposed to being 16 or something. So and I think that, like Jake said, about if you'd have told him at the start of lockdown he'd be tackling giant steps. If 5 years ago, like, if you'd have said that I'd be having a decent crack at improvising through giant steps at 250, I'd have never have believed it. So I think there is some, without being too braggy, it's I do feel like there is some merit to it, and the achievement is quite cool in some ways.
We spoke a little bit about why we do these little videos and put them on the Slack channel that we talk on. And part of it is to have a record of where you were. Yeah. I think it's very easy to lose sight of the progress that you make, and you have to sort of visit those uncomfortable videos. They don't need to be public, but the stuff I've been putting on Slack isn't necessarily flattering, but it's a representation of that moment. And what's quite nice is that the further I go, I can then look back at that and say, okay, well, I've actually moved on. And that kind of feeling can get lost if you don't have like a kind of an anchor point to judge it by. And I would say that because then you feel as though, I have made improvements, that is empowering for other future improvements as well. And it's very good for you, and I go on about it, but it's very good for habit forming.
I think it's really nice. Sorry, then. Oh, sorry. I think it's really nice to have like this little mini. I know it's pretty much just the four of us, but it's nice to have this like mini community where quite regularly one of us will stumble across something. Like, it might be just a little variation of a lick or a little thing, and it's like, oh shit, okay, how am I going to pick that? Or how would you guys pick this? Or you stumble across these little things, and it's nice to have a little forum to sort of chuck these things in. And then there's been times before where all four of us have been like, oh shit, how do you do that? And then like we've all been putting our sort of hat in the ring about how we do stuff. I think it's especially through like lockdown and stuff, I think that is a really kind of valuable thing to have, much like the Facebook discussion group, which is sort of becoming that, to be honest.
I posted the video. I posted my 250 BPM take into there just before we started, actually. So I'll put a few more in. I actually did a take at, I think I did one at 220 as well, where I was showing the sort of the picking thing where it gets harder. So I'll put that one in. And if any of you guys are working on stuff, or you want to crack at that, love to see it. Love to hear what you're working on.
if you want to drop a challenge and leave, do that. Come in and drop the gauntlet and go, oh yeah, how about this, boys? And then see what happens.
I've actually got, I'll have to dig out some videos from when I first started this journey. So when was it? 2013, maybe sort of that time, 2013, when I was first starting to learn to play changes and jazz again. I videoed and recorded myself like religiously. So I've got hours and hours on hard drives, on old hard drives of me just like obviously really, really, really sucking and really trying to do it. So I might have to.
This sounds like TGH YouTube content, reacting to old videos, kind of.
Oh yeah.
My college, I think second year uni performances are on YouTube somewhere. So it'll be really interesting. I'm playing the chicken very badly.
In fact, I've probably got videos. I'll have videos of me learning to do the legato technique as well and stuff. So to get reacting to all those and
just another thing. I was listening to the Guitar Wank podcast the other day, and my boy Whit Smith was on there from Hot Club of Cowtown, who is like, I guess you would. He plays in a Western swing band, but he is just an incredible kind of. I guess if you through his own description on the podcast, he said there's like a little time period, sort of somewhere between like 1933 to like 1940 something, of guitar and music that he's really interested in. And he was talking with Bruce Foreman. I think those two are good mates, and obviously Bruce is like a sort of traddy bebop guy, but he also has a kind of weird Western swing band called Cowbop, I think. But they were talking about the whole thing. This kind of goes back to the vocab thing from a couple of weeks ago, but they were talking about how to operate within, how did he put it, being aesthetically appropriate, I think is the term he used, which I quite like, and then putting your own spin on it. And he said, not to be too sort of braggadocious, but it's almost like he said he wants to try and sound like a contemporary of his heroes. So it's like he wants to sound like if all the players that he likes and that were around, say, died, stopped, whatever in 1945, then he wants to sound like the guy that came out in 1946, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, that's an interesting mindset, isn't it? And some people take that approach, and then others are very, very much the other side of the coin. I always think this splits off into people like who are very historical and almost like
curators.
Yeah, curators or historians, yeah. And then people that are just living for the present and the pure, or as pure as possible expression side of things. Yeah, if we think about people that we've had on the show, like I take like someone like Wayne Krantz as someone that is not to say that he can't play historically, with language and whatever, but he's very much a proponent of like being just trying to be free for free's sake, and on an improvisation, sort of improvising in such a way that is not concerned with, or at least attempting to not be inspired by what's come before. So it's a very different mindset, I think, that you can go down creatively as an improviser.
There was that great video that I sent you guys about Wayne Krantz. He's on a stage talking to someone, and he mentions that point. I mean, it's a bit late now, but we were talking about the vocabulary thing, he had some things to say about that that were very interesting, and I wish I'm not going to attempt to paraphrase what he said. But yeah, I'll send a link over to Dave to put in the show notes from the video that I saw. It's really interesting, and he says it's much better than I could.
Yeah, but I mean, sort of paraphrasing, it's this idea of the language and creativity and improvisation, and it's just a different, in regards to what Dan's talking about, these two streams of operation that you can go down as an improvising musician, and I think they're equally valid. I think you get you can mount a very strong defense of the sort of historian aspect of standing on the shoulders of giants. But likewise, I think you can take a much more lukewarm stance on that and just sort of go balls deep with the improv for the sake of improv. Yeah.
I think the other thing as well that's thought of is there's probably like as well as there being a split between, say, guys that want to be the historians and want to be these, bearers of the flame, keeping it going sort of thing, and then the other guys that sort of maybe go through what. And I've heard of a lot of jazz guys that have sort of like they've done their time in various different things. So they might have done their time in this era, and then this era, and then this era, and then they kind of go, right, I'm going to leave that all behind now, and I'm just going to, let what happens and be myself sort of thing. Having done all that other work, there's probably also like a split with the audience as well. Like if you imagine going to like like you see these every few years, there's like a new sort of young blues sensation, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Now, there's probably an audience that is split between, if somebody like that comes into the frame, they'll either be thinking, oh, look what he's bringing to the blues, or they'll be thinking, this guy's not playing, the B.B. King and the Clapton licks that I want. Do you see what I mean? It's like there'll be a sort of on the other end some sort of reception that is like either they want that thing or that thing.
Yeah, and that's a funny one as well. I mean, there are some guys that seem to be able to do it all as well in our field, like or have the freedom or the luxury to be able to do it all. So something that's kind of related to what we're talking about here. I just need to give a shout out because we haven't actually mentioned it, and I thought I had, but we hadn't. That Jonathan Kreisberg, he's doing a sort of membership sort of lesson type thing, monthly thing. And yeah, I signed up for that the other night. Oh, it was when I was doing It was when I was doing my 3 a.m. shedding, giant step shedding. And he'd posted on a link to a Blue and Green transcription of his, and that was through this. And I suddenly remembered about it and thought, we need to shout that out on the podcast. So Jonathan Kreisberg, a legendary, incredible jazz guitar player, mascot of the show, I think, or friend of the show, whatever you term. So he's got this sort of membership tuition thing that I think it's run by Rick Beato's thing, Flat 5. There's a few different educators on there.
All right.
And so it's sort of like a Patreon, but for run by Rick.
It's just the exploration of note.
Yes, that's it. It's called Explorations of Note. And it's the reason I bring this up is because I signed up for it, obviously, to support Jonathan and to get the valuable content. There's lots of different cool things. There's mini lessons, there's live streams, there's bootlegs to all of his stuff, to all of his, recordings and things and rare stuff, transcriptions. So it's really, really cool. And obviously not going to go into what he's teaching and giving away on there, but there's just some really, really interesting things related to what we talk about on the podcast in regards to language acquisition and control of your instrument and all this stuff. It's really, really good content. So I signed up for it in sort of as a, supporting, hero and a sort of friend and stuff whilst, but then I'm kind of definitely am staying for the content because it's amazing stuff. And I would highly recommend you guys all check it out if you're sort of interested in what we're doing. But he's one of those guys that has all of that, done all of that homework, if you like, and also has a sound and is very free and can be very, very modern and not historical at times. And I think that it's, you get other guys like, who else is there that does that? Ben Unson, who's also been on the show. He's another guy that can also, I refer to him as like he has this dimmer switch or this, where he can dial up and down the amount of language and his historical nature to his playing.
It's kind of like trad on one end and modern on the other. It's like
trying to think where I saw him in New York, and I think that wasn't with you guys, was it? Did we see? No, that must have been with Tom. and when I saw Ben play in Bar Next Door, and all I'd seen of Ben playing before then was the more kind of sort of hyper modern, sort of fusiony sort of stuff. And then he did this gig at Bar Next Door, and it was all standards, and it was super, languagey and vocab. So it's really interesting how some guys have this dimmer switch to their playing and an ability to control that. But the other thing about the Jonathan Kreisberg's explorations of note is that he's it's been a real nice affirmation of my current language journey, because he's describing and teaching and talking of things in a way that's he's tracking along with what I've been doing. So that's kind of a nice confirmation bias, if you like, as to what's been going on with my journey here. So highly recommend checking that out if you guys are fans of Jonathan's playing, or just a really great guitar tuition and jazz tuition. Should we do some emails?
Yeah, man.
It's been a while since we've done some emails, but we've had some come in, and thought we'd read them out, and some relating to previous topics. So actually, Alex Jones, who's a new patron this week, has also sent in a question, and it's kind of it's not addressed to Tom, but it's about Tom. So maybe Tom can give us some thoughts on this if we don't cover everything when he gets back on the next episode. But this is to do with our Guitar Heroes episode, and I'll read this out. Its the subject is Tom Quayle the new Zakk Wylde? Period. Colon. Guitar Heroes and Signature Guitars. Hi guys, hope you're all well, and thanks for all your content. Just a quick ramble referring back to the recent couple of episodes on Guitar Heroes. Two particular guitars have struck me as interesting lately: Tom's Signature Ibanez and the various Mateus Asato Sir models. Tom will obviously have greater insight into this, but I thought that it was amazing that two high-profile companies are using artists like Tom and Mateus so prominently in their signature lines. When I first started playing, signature guitars seemed to be reserved for mainly the likes of Vai, Satriani, Zakk Wylde, Eric Clapton, Kirk Hammett, etc., who were all very well known as recording artists. Are manufacturers turning to a more diverse range of players to endorse their products because there is a lack of new guitar heroes to replace the old guard? Which I think fits in with the consensus of the TGH episode on the subject. Or is it because the likes of Tom and Mateus are the new kind of guitar hero and we haven't quite become explicitly aware of it yet? My thoughts are that in the social media age, a guitarist doesn't necessarily need the kind of exposure that would have traditionally only been available through selling a load of albums and touring extensively to wield a big influence over a community. And I find myself increasingly watching YouTube and Instagram of players who've become well known without releasing music. Tom's recent Lazy First Finger Syndrome video has nearly 120,000 views at the time of writing, which would work out to around 34,000 hours of viewers looking at an Ibanez guitar. Are we lacking guitar heroes because they're not appearing where we would expect to find them? Are the YouTube views the new album sales figures? Is Tom Quayle the new Zakk Wylde? Are the big brands coming to a realization that the shop window is now a home studio rather than a stage? Thanks for your time and stay safe, guys. Alex. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for writing in. I think you've kind of nailed it there. I'm not sure how much we can sort of add to that. Maybe Tom can at some point when he gives his thoughts on it. But it would seem to me that is the case, that brands are increasingly aware of that.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's absolutely the home studio or the studio now as opposed to a stage in the current pandemic crisis. Absolutely. So, but certainly I think some of the comments we were making on Guitar Heroes were very specific to a particular definition of a guitar hero as well. And even some of those players that you cite there, no, maybe not, but Satriani and Vai, not necessarily sidemen. I know that initially Vai may have been, but he very quickly developed his own sort of quirky solo career. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that in the past the signature guitarist was a sideman and in a lot of well-known profile bands, but that doesn't exist anymore. Without recovering too much ground we've already trod, that is just that's a dinosaur.
Well, the sideman thing is potentially not as maybe accurate as it sounds. Like sideman sounds like if you're doing a sideman gig, it's like you don't matter and you're just there to back the singer.
Oh man, yeah, that's
But
a good point. Sorry.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back in the day, it was like in terms of ranking, it was whoever lead singer and then the guitar player in those bands.
Yes, what I meant there, sorry, I meant literally to the side of the singer, like as in, it's in terms of the band. You know, you'd have Axl Rose and Slash, you'd have Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, you'd have John Bon Jovi and Richie Sambora. It's the heartthrob frontman center singing the songs, and then the guitar player gets his 30 seconds. It's definitely subservient and secondary to the singer. But in terms of the rest of the band, if any sort of muggle is going to know the names of people in the band, it's going to be the lead singer and then the lead guitar player. So that's how I was defining the word guitar hero in the context of as a sideman. I realize that sideman can mean lots of other things as well in terms of a working guitar player. Yeah.
Well, the only thing I'd add is that, follow the numbers. At some point, somebody worked out that this would sell guitars or lend credibility to a brand. Mm-hmm. And the great thing with social media is you can see the numbers underneath. You don't have to sort of
guess it.
Yeah. You don't have to guess at them. And the internet has made those numbers massive for what used to be quite a niche thing. So I would just say, look, it is not for us to understand the value judgment that anyone is making. It is just a numbers game, and that's just the way things are.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's a perk of the internet as well is that the sort of repeatable experience is very different than, if you went to watch, say, David Lee Roth or something and Vi's on the side of the stage. You're there that one night only and you're like, whoa, great experience. Or you see a guitar magazine or something.
Yeah.
Whereas now, there's hours and hours of things on YouTube. You could sit there and watch it 10 times if you want. You can sit there and indulge in it. It's not
interactivity.
And
community based.
Exactly.
Very authentic.
There's a slightly different kind of model there in terms of exposure, if you like.
Sorry, Jay, go on.
Oh no! I took an inhale and was going to jump in, but then I realised I'd said it already. But I think people have. When this started happening, it was very like, oh, but for those of us who have been in the kind of the crosshairs of that and noticed it start happening, I would say it would have started around 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's
just started to sort of turn around, and it totally coincides with the growth of social media. And like I said, I don't think there's a sort of aesthetic judgment, a value judgment that these companies make. It is simply, I think this will help us sell instruments.
It's numbers, isn't it?
Just moving with the times, isn't it?
It's purely numbers, and that's just because you get. It's an interesting thing that's just occurred to me now as well. Is that you're not tied by the limitations of your physical geography or physical market, and even if you're not selling in that region, you're creating demand and hype perhaps in that region, and that can only be a good thing. So this type of advertising, I don't know, let's try and think of an example here that's worked on me. Let's take Fractal. That's a great one. Okay, so I'm a huge fan of Fractal Audio, XFX FM3, and if you think about there are really interesting companies. I didn't expect to go down this direction on this show, but in that they don't sell through the usual channels. So you can't go into a shop and buy an XFX. You have to, certainly in the UK, you have to order it from not even the UK distributor. It's a European distributor. So you can't buy them in the UK.
You also can't go and try one.
No. But I see videos from people demoing them early and all around the world, and it creates demand and drive even in a country. They might not sell it to me in this country, but I still get the darn videos enticing me. And so I think there's an element to this sort of idea of marketing and the with social media and the sort of the borderless nature to it that is just unprecedented in terms of how people have been able to get something into someone's eyeballs and how you can influence people for certain products and certain services. So it's definitely, worked on me where I've felt that annoyance of, or let's say, an even better example would be totally unrelated to guitars, but say digital products or streaming services or things. How many people, when Disney Plus launched last year in the US, only in the US, were pissed off and frustrated that they couldn't see The Mandalorian for 6 months until it came out in.
Yeah. Just felt wrong, didn't it? It felt like a backward step.
Yeah, if you feel angry, you feel like, what, it doesn't make any sense. It's very frustrating. But we still got all the adverts. We still saw all the memes. We still got all the spoilers of the content. And it's, in some ways, that's a bad thing. Obviously, maybe you're burning bridges with potential people that, are annoyed about that too much. But I still think that the pent-up demand and drive for the marketing is probably on balance a net positive for these companies. And so likewise with guitar gear or whatever niche you're in, if you have a worldwide reach, even if your product isn't available over there, then it's an amazingly powerful thing. And people that are prevalent with all those numbers are going to be amazingly useful for that. So yeah, thanks for your email, Alex, and thanks for signing up for Patreon. And we'll maybe see if Tom's got any more thoughts on that next episode.
One thing that I will hard disagree or whatever on is that Tom does not have enough hair to be the next Zach Wilde.
That's a little unfair. He's not here to defend himself.
I think he'd agree with me. It's fine.
Yeah,
he doesn't pick enough either.
It is a fact. It is a fact. But
there are multiple differences. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to answer your question, Alex, is Tom Quayle the new Zach Wilde? We'd say a definite no.
Iranu.
Cool. Let's. Right then, guys. Well, where are we? And we're coming up on the hour. So. I think if there's nothing else that you guys can think of, we'll wind it down.
Sure thing.
Cool.
I didn't have a safe word.
You didn't have a safe word.
Were you talking? Okay. Were you talking before about saying you were going to abandon like country licks and stuff, Beeps? Because of your age and stuff.
It was when I was talking about. I made a very conscious decision around 31, 32 to when I decided I wanted to revisit and learn to play jazz, learn to play changes, and develop a technique I could improvise with. Yes, I put to one side any sort of dreams of being a country star or like a shredder or a kind of sweep picking, tapping, that kind of thing, to focus in a very blinkered or lasered fashion on changes playing and legato. Yeah.
All right then. So listeners, if you've listened this far, you are truly committed. Comment in the Facebook discussion group or Instagram. No country for old Beebs.
Very good.
I love it. Nice one, dude. Well, guys, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We've loved doing the show, and we really appreciate you listening. Just want to say a huge thanks once again to all our lovely patrons that are supporting us and making the show possible. Our executive producers are Alan De La Cruz, Andy French, Dave Cookson, David Kisselbauer, Elliot DeVries, James Went, Jerry Popek, Jonathan Murrell, Mark Lee, Martin Mason, Matt Burtwhistle, Maxime Kaczynski, Michael Lawrence, Michael Norris, Michael Smith, Mike Paty, lots of Michaels, Nick Gauntlet, Nika Acas, Norman Taylor, and Paskin794, Pat De Jong, Robert S. Lehar, Sam Oxley, Sam Whiting, Tim Bennett, Ulf Schwarak, Volkan Bakirdan, and Will Pusey. Thank you guys for supporting us at the Executive Producer Plus level. Once again, from just $1 a week, you can get access to the Guitar Hour Patreon bonus content, where you'll get the longer episodes, all the extra minutes, the band stuff, the uncut interviews, and for the executive producer plus level, you'll get the live stream with the videos and guitars. Just a reminder, we're doing that this Sunday on the 29th at 8 p.m. UK time. You can also check out our Teespring merch store for t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Support us over on Instagram, follow us there, join in the Facebook discussion group, and send an email to hello@theguitarhourpodcast.com. And yeah, until next time, thanks for joining me, guys. Bye.
Ta-ta.
Bye.
Oh, my voice went. Bye.
You know that's staying in.